Welcome. My name is Jay Taylor. I'm the Vice President of Technical Marketing here at ScreenBeam. And joining me on this call is Ryan.
Hello, Jay. Good to see you, sir. Yes, I'm Ryan Gray by day. I am proud to be the Executive Director of Technology Engagement and Strategy at Yavapai College in beautiful northern Arizona. I Again, that title is perfect because nobody knows what it means, so it kind of means I can do whatever I want to do. But what it really means is sort of assistant CIO for the outward-facing part of IT here, the customer service and our classrooms, our educational work, and things like that. And then on the side, I'm proud to serve as editor-in-chief of Higher Ed AV Media, which is part of the HETMA organization. So I keep myself busy on all things technology and higher education.
Yeah, and we love the partnership with HETMA, right? Because it serves to promote the responsible use, I would say, of technology in education, right? And that's kind of one of our goals is we're trying to bring technology into the higher education space in a responsible way, not just technology for the sake of technology, but things that actually make a difference, products that make a difference in how teachers teach, how students learn, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love that use of responsible, and I think that's it's a key concept because there is a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of technology for technology's sake that can go around both from teachers and instructors who see something they think is cool and want to use it, and or from the industry that says we've developed something, especially maybe we've developed it for corporate and we think we can shoehorn it over into education. And so the technology managers working on campus live in that world of how can I balance both of those along with budget and demands and be part of IT organizations and have these jobs that are critical but sometimes overlooked. And so there is a lot of that balance, and I like that term responsible, which is, to your point, like you said, use case based, right? It is about the experience that we create, not just the model numbers and the list of things that can go in a rack, but what is really changing outcomes for students that are in classrooms day in and day out.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the things that's exciting about my job, right? Is my background is engineering. I'm a hardware engineer. That's what I went to school for. That's what I've done my entire career. But in this role as a sort of technical marketing role, I kind of bridge that gap between engineering and customers. And so I get to talk to customers a lot, understand what their challenges are, what their pain points are, but on the other hand, I work with some of the brightest engineers I've ever met. And I've been in this field for 30 plus years now. And, the guys that I work with are just really, really sharp. But if you leave them alone without, kind of direction, they're going to come up with some amazing things that just aren't relevant to the use case. It's cool, it's flashy, it's shiny, but it's not solving the challenges and the pain points that customers like yourself have. And so being able to bridge that gap and bring direction to these engineers and say, these are the challenges, these are the pain points, these are what we need to solve, that creates a really exciting opportunity, at least personally for me, because I know that when we get something out the door, it's impactful. It is solving somebody's pain point, somebody's challenge.
Yeah, you're right. That is it. That is really cool, and I will defend a little, the engineers in that front too, which is like technology is changing, their world is changing. There's always new possibilities, but in their defense, like the world of how education, especially higher education, is working since COVID, especially, is changing pretty quickly too. It's hard to stay on the forefront of all of those things. So, having people like you in that role that are living both of those worlds and then connecting with us where we're trying to live in both of those worlds makes a difference. And I would say I can probably count on one hand the number of manufacturers I could say have really understood this, and ScreenBeam's kind of first on that list, because it is evident in the things that you guys roll out that that work has been done, and then it becomes evident when you hear the firsthand I hear firsthand from colleagues and from people that are saying, this is what we're able to do, this is why we're moving this way, and it is always based around the use cases that they've been able to put together. So there's something really cool about you know companies, first off, that have that mindset, but that are built around that concept of A, being nimble to change, but B, being tied in, especially to what education is needing. And
Yeah.
you can tell it just makes a difference when, you forgive me, but you're right. We see a lot of spec sheets or marketing materials of
Yeah.
different products, and lots of times when I see yours, you're just like, "Yep, that's a win. Yep, that's a win. Yep, I know how that would work." And then then the coming soon, and you're like, "Yeah, that's those are kind of the things I could see
Yeah.
myself asking for." So, yeah, not to get, I'm willing to geek and fanboy out, but I would agree with that because, as I
Yeah.
said, there's only a few manufacturers that I can truly say that about, and ScreenBeam is definitely like the top of that list.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I think I had to adjust when I joined ScreenBeam, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago now. I came from a big silicon
Hmm.
guy, one of the major CPU suppliers, in the entire PC ecosystem, and they had 15,000 employees, and so on and so forth, and it was very much decision by committee, in how the decisions were made. And then join a smaller outfit like ScreenBeam, where we're a tenth of the size, 150 employees and so on and so forth. We still have a global
Hmm.
footprint. I'm working directly with the CEO, and it's like, this is a story I tell a lot. And this was the shock for me, was I had been with the company for about 2 months. We were over in Taiwan, for a big show over there, and and I'm sitting with the CEO. And at the time, ScreenBeam was focused on the consumer space, living rooms, and
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff, wireless display for that space. And I had just come from this big company, and I climbed into a cab with our CEO, and he was just kind of asked me how things were going. And I said, well, honestly, I think we're chasing the wrong market. And, I felt like I was going out on a limb a little bit,
Yeah.
telling the CEO of the company that he's taking the company in the wrong direction. But I'm like, I just came from this corporate world where, we're doing presentations all day long, 5, 6 hours a day. We're in meetings and all of those sorts of things. You know, you know, I think we're chasing the wrong market, because, I don't need wireless display in a consumer device the same way I would need it in an education scenario or in an enterprise
Hmm.
scenario. I'm like, if we change the I/O on the device, and add VGA support and stuff at the time, because VGA was still
Yeah.
really big. I'm like, if we change some of these things, we could go be selling these things like crazy in these other markets. And with that one conversation, he flipped the direction of the company, and I was stunned by how nimble he was willing to
Yeah.
be. That it was such a breath of fresh air, because coming from the corporate space where everything's decision by committee, here somebody has a good idea, he
Hmm.
listens. And listening to the customers is so vital, I think, in the health of a company.
I love that story because there is there's a risk tolerance that is going along with that story, right? Which is, I get this message from one of my team members that's out there connected, and I'm willing to kind of make change. And you have to have some risk tolerance for it, but that's what allows nimbleness. And another word that you can use on that is responsive. It'll just let you be
Yeah.
responsive. I, you know,
Yeah.
it's funny because there's such a parallel in higher education as well, where there are institutions that are same thing, run by committee and classrooms and things like that. And it's not, no, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just a different way. There's a whole provost committee that makes big decisions about what is happening in classrooms, where, I'm at a school that I love because we're big enough to do cool. We're big enough to do cool stuff. We're big enough to have some money. We're small enough that, same thing, I can have a firsthand conversation with the president and change the direction of a project or something like that. I was joking. I'm at that place where, from my current position, I'm two steps below the president, and our student workers are only 2 steps below me. I'm right there in the middle, and it's at that place where you can you can reach and touch everybody, but it makes it it makes a difference. It lets people kind of drive, but it takes trust. That the flip side to that is it takes trust, which is if we're willing to make change, we're willing to, see the reality on the ground for what it is and accept that and make change, then the teams have to have trust in each other that we're not going to, no one person is going to lead us astray. So not to hijack or throw it back to you, but in ScreenBeam, how do you feel like those relationships work amongst your colleagues and your teams in terms of, both having trust with each other and having a shared vision of what the company is doing? I ask it because it comes across, right? I see that. I see strength in that out of ScreenBeam, and I'm always here to steal, success from other people.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to the culture. That conversation, that I had with our CEO, 13, 14 years ago, sitting in a cab, is really prevalent of the culture of the company itself, and the diverseness of the employees here, right? We hire, great engineers from different companies, different backgrounds and all of that. But at the same time, we also hire from education institutions. My director of education strategy, for example, is a former classroom instructor. And so he brings a lot of that street cred, if you will, having dealt with those challenges, dealt with those pains, and for instructors in the classroom. And he brings a lot of that, and we listen. We have to listen. He's got a lot more relative experience of that classroom thing than I do. And so I'd be foolish to implement my own vision on something that I'm not the expert in. And so, that listening to each other, because we bring different insights and different backgrounds and different capabilities to the table, is really critical into how we define products, how we approach the market.
Yeah, I love how you talk about that, because it's so funny how, like, it seems no matter what I do these days, everything circles back to one of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that seek to understand before being understood that you just talked about there, right? Which is bring diverse backgrounds together and listen first, and before you know it, that people being committed to understanding those around them first before being understood by them, like, leads to this kind of synergy that wow, that was a great corporate word I just grabbed out of the air right there. I love it when I grab a corporate word, that allows people then to see things they might not have otherwise. So whether it be, your example of, we were working in residential, but it allowed somebody to hear, oh, there's other markets we should be going at. And then once you're in those markets, this thought of, like, well, what are we? We're wireless display. We're now literally the message is we're more than wireless display, and you're doing all these other things with your platform that say you can see lots of different perspectives coming into it to say, like, okay, we are in a place now where, we have, our hardware. We have our boxes in places in classrooms, but that's valuable for lots of different things. And in my role, my role now is having a little bit more of a broad IT look. The way that your guys' platforms allow for things like, emergency messaging and large platform administration, where you're maintaining the core of great audio visual experience for students and teachers, because that's what's happening every day. But then behind the scenes, the people that support it have tools to make sure that uptime stays high. And
Yep.
we're not turning away from all of the things that make sure that, security needs are met, and the ability to do things efficiently at scale, like an enterprise IT deployment, melded with still that in classroom experience is kind of
Yeah.
neat, and to see how ScreenBeam continues to build and add onto things, right? Whatever I buy day one, I'd like this, right? If I get a ScreenBeam 1100 into a room, the worst it's ever going to be is today, because a
Right.
year from now it's going to be better than it is today. That
Yes.
kind of returns that value. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love, and that only comes from, like, sorry, not to monologue, but you can tell when roadmaps are built by somebody that has one person that doesn't seek to understand before being understood. They kind of, this is the direction and this is where we're going. Then you don't get those other things to come in. So you can see the difference here to go, let's see all the possibilities and listen to our customers, hear what is going on, and find ways to build those solutions into
Yep.
what we're already making. So it's great. Like, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that is, whether wherever you drive your car and park it every day to work, some of those themes, they resonate, whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit, public sector, education, corporate, doesn't
Yep.
matter.
Yeah.
Humans work together best in those sorts of situations.
Yep. So, InfoComm's coming
Hmm.
up, in a couple of weeks. Um, you know, I'm personally excited. We're going to be right across the aisle from the HETMA booth. So, and I know the HETMA guys love to party. So we're expecting a lot of excitement. Um, what are you looking forward towards, InfoComm this year?
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And yeah, InfoComm is, like, for me personally, it's like the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? It is that annual event. Even with ISE on my calendar now every year, which is technically a bigger show,
Yep.
InfoComm is home. You know what I'm saying? It's that
Yeah.
event that I remember the first one I went to back when I used to work at Live Event when I was a young person, just like, what I'm saying, in my 20s, just wide eyed about,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. Like, I wish that guy would now know, like, when you're in your 40s, yeah, you'll be a little thicker and you'll be moving a little slower, but you're going to have a booth. You're going to be doing media coverage. You're going to be part of the mechanism of this amazing event. Like,
Yep.
it's very cool. So yeah, I always look forward to it. And one of the growing reasons for that is HETMA getting the opportunity, and a huge thank you as always to Avixa for our partnership, because it kind of allows that to be the first end user organization to say, we're going to have a booth, we're going to have a presence on the show floor. And what that has turned into to kind of become that hub for higher education to meet up and be together. And now how, like, with you guys starting to try and really build this organic hub of education focus on the show floor, around, ScreenBeam's right across the hall, right across the aisle, and that's no mistake. And
Yeah.
and other manufacturers that really kind of have that focus that you guys do, saying this, you know this feels like home. We want members of higher education to feel like the HETMA booth is home, and you guys are like, yeah, we want to be part of that home. We all want to work together to create this opportunity for, um, for people who work in education that may not be plugged in, that may not have heard of everything that's happening, where they can come in, meet colleagues, get involved, and see awesome technology and hear from people that are using it for the benefit of their campus. So I know that's kind of a long answer.
Yeah.
It's a long week. You know, I'm my trip there, it's like 12 days this year, right? Like I'll be dead at the end of it. But
Yep.
for those of us in HETMA that, you know, volunteer time for the mission of the org, this is what we do it for, right? There will be, as there are every year, there will be people who are new into this and they're feeling lost and they don't really know, you know, they feel like they're on an island doing AV work in higher ed, and they're going to leave InfoComm connected to a community. And that's really exciting to us.
Yeah. So, you know, what do you think the overarching, I guess, story for higher education is going to be this year?
Yeah, I think it's you have to acknowledge first that there continues to be sort of volatility, funding volatility, especially for universities. Anybody involved with federal funding, there continues to be, you know, there continues to be challenges. I'll throw my quick pitch in, which is, you know, don't sleep on community colleges out there or people, you know, public institutions that are funded through, say, property taxes or other things. We don't have some of that same volatility. Um,
Yep.
but but I think part of the overarching thing across everything now is, and you know, everybody expects what you're going to say, AI. But what I really think it is this the idea that we have to be able to do more with the same resources. And
Yeah.
while the promise of AI being built into hardware or being available is kind of driving some of that conversation, there is more and more this idea that I can't buy a piece of equipment to do one thing. I need equipment to do multiple things. I need one box to replace three boxes in order to meet expectations. And seeing how manufacturers are responding to that, you know, kind of to that need, especially as the bright line between audiovisual and IT not only is blurred, but now, you know, is almost non-existent, you know, depending on who you ask on that front. That's kind of when, as the work I'll do this year, what I'm looking for are those companies that are really trying to find ways to do that, which is to take things that were traditionally considered separate functions and find ways to create, God, I want to pull synergy, or find ways to create more cross functionality out of hardware, and then leveraging what cloud management or centralized management platforms can do, for the life cycle of the devices and for the people that have to kind of upkeep, maintain, and service them on campuses. So I don't know. That may not sound that may not sound exciting, but those are the sorts of things I think that make a difference for technology managers, where I can buy, if I can buy one thing and get multiple things out of it, and it's something that I know I can keep an eye on, it's easy to maintain, and it's going to be reliable day in and day out.
Yeah. And, you know, and I think that we're seeing something similar, like in my conversations with customers, right? We're seeing that, you know, higher education is looking for not just connectivity and wireless casting anymore. They're looking for something that creates that engaging environment, that's flexible, that's manageable, and all of that kind of stuff. And that it applies into more than just a single space, right? It can be used in your classrooms. It can be used in your active learning spaces. It can be used in your, you know, foyers and in lobbies and media centers and all of those sorts of spaces. So you get some level of standardization out of it, but then it also, you know, can do more than just one thing, right? It's no longer just about casting. It's about collaboration. It's about messaging and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, I agree. It's right along that same, right? Like the expectation is more out of the same. And so you're right, that idea that the same thing can be used in multiple places. It can be used in a simple room, it can be used in a complex room, and it can be used by instructors with different levels of techno joy versus techno fear, right?
Yeah.
That flexibility is now kind of it's almost a requirement for almost anything. And so that idea that, a big move we've made on our campus, and I think everybody has, but is really, um, technology is getting to the point now where, it's getting so good and so flexible that our users really shouldn't have to think much about it, right? The days of I come in and there's a touch panel and somebody has to train me on how to use the classroom before I can use it, versus nowadays where I walk in with my laptop and I can hit one cable or hit one network, you know what I'm saying? And I just now am in control of what's going on, is is really coming to fruition. And it goes to that same thing that you're talking about, right? Which is, if I can do that in one classroom, I should be able to do all of them. And why would my conference room work any different when I go in there? It's so that not just the standardization for upkeep, but then that standardization of experience across campus for sure is a driving factor.
Now, in a number of my conversations with folks, right, I'm kind of getting three themes that are kind of challenging for folks, right, for IT and AV teams, right, is, resource constraints, right? You're being asked to support more spaces, more devices, without additional staff.
Mm-hmm.
You're the diversity of devices that you've got to support now, right, is seems to be growing in all of that. Yet they want consistent experiences across, Windows, Chrome, Android, Mac,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, right? And then that kind of the third piece of that puzzle is you're still being asked to modernize these spaces without, like, massive costly upgrades. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and those are almost competing challenges by themselves. Is that what you're seeing kind of on your side as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you hit the nail on the head with that, the constraints and those things, and this idea that, like, the overarching thing is this perception that technology is just always easy, because it always seems, people in their lives are like, oh, my iPhone just works every time I turn it on. Therefore, everything in the world should work like that. And we have to bridge that gap in ways where, if people want, like you said, I want to, um, go into a classroom that has multiple displays and I want to display to all of them, or let a student share to all of them, or break them up into groups and have, an active learning sort of thing. And but there's no patience or money necessarily to say, okay, yeah, we're going to put in a giant, matrix switched video system to make that happen, you know and shouldn't Wi-Fi just solve all of the problems we have? And there are places and times where it can, and there are places
Right.
and times where we can leverage the technology that's already on our campus to make what used to be really complicated, AV systems actually into something pretty simple. But it has to be built into the fabric of the devices you choose, right? And not to to kind of just beat around the bush, but that idea that, you know the the for instance, I keep a ScreenBeam 1100 on my desk all the time because I use it here in my office. But it enables these multi-use classrooms to be general presentation or active learning without having to do a huge, changeover in video routing. And another thing that comes up a ton, and there's people think of this more of as a K-12 thing, but it happens in higher ed a lot too, which is, um, teachers being able to pull in, multiple people's devices in a room and either see it themselves or display it up for everybody else. And this sort of, like, things that used to involve processors to tile, are now being built into boxes that can just go at each display. So I don't know. I'll fanboy and geek out as much as
Yeah.
anybody will. But I I agree that those pressures exist for people, and so finding those ways that are outside the box to deal with them rather than sort of the old. Let's put it this way: if you went to a traditional integrator and said, I have a classroom that's going to have 8 displays and I need the ability to show one thing on all of them or all of them separate, you'd get a quote for a large matrix AV over IP deployment of some type. And that you don't have to do it that way. You know what I'm saying? There are so many other options for how those sorts of functions can be done, and can be done in a way that those end users can use easily every day without you being there running it for them.
Yeah, and that's something that we've been, I think, working on, right? Because one is by supporting all the native casting protocols,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of stretching that out to support regardless of that multi-device complexity of devices that you've got, right? By using those native protocols and making it easy for users that like, oh look, you just use what's ever built into your device and you have that capability, but then extending that across to like one of the new things that we're going to be showing is BrowserCast at InfoComm. And so we take that that connectivity model and simplify it even further, so that way, like, look, if you don't have the ability to do AirPlay, or you don't have the ability to do Windows K Miracast or something like that, here's another simple way that you can do it.
Yeah.
Now, what's really cool about, I think that you're going to particularly like in higher ed is I'm crossing my fingers I'm going to be able to show this at InfoComm this year, because I'm supposed to get my version, my internal version, the week after InfoComm, and so I'm pushing engineering to give it to me a few days early, so that I can show it at the show. But we're going to add moderation capabilities.
Yeah,
require no apps, no plugins, no browser stuff. It's just there, and the instructor sees it. They can approve students being able to share to the screen and all of that. Really, it's really, really slick. I'm really excited about this one. But bringing that to these platforms and bringing it to the different rooms like active learning and stuff like that, where you have these needs, that's a big part of our effort.
Yeah, and I think to that front, like some of our spaces that get used a ton, because we just built a new building, are like the study room spaces. They're always full, small group, because students are getting way more assignments that involve collaboration and working together on stuff. And so it could be 3, 5, 8 students working on a project together in a room, and those same functionalities help them in those spaces, and the ability to whiteboard or write on top of the things that they're working on and keep that as part of what they're doing, right, is just like there's so many capabilities now. And then as a my college serves a pretty big geographic area. There's oftentimes not everybody working in a group is there and present. Some may be on another campus, and so they're connected remotely. So having whiteboards in the room is great, but that doesn't work as well for people on the other side. So really being able to have your content easily shared, easily brought into calls, and further eliminating the differences of geography for collaboration, what I'm saying, is awesome. So yeah, I'm hoping you get your unit early as well, so that we can all get a sneak peek.
Yeah, well, and the collaboration piece, I think, is so important, because when I talk with different universities and everything, part of the way I'm approaching it is I'm not just a technology company trying to build something and sell you something, right? I'm also a customer in respects, right? Because we're the guys that are hiring your graduates. And there are things that we need from those graduates, and collaboration skills is one of those really, really important things.
Yeah.
And so ensuring that the kids are learning how to collaborate, how to use these tools effectively, how to it's it's more than just YouTube and TikTok.
Yeah.
I went to I had a meeting at a community college here in Colorado, and I was kind of a part of an advisory committee, and and you know one of the questions came up, for the staff was like, okay, who are your customers?
Mm-hmm.
Almost everybody that the school was saying, well, the students are customers. We need to we need to meet the students. We need to attract them and all of those sorts of things. And that's true, right? But they were throwing out things like, oh, we need to incorporate more TikTok. We need to incorporate more social things into the education process. And, I kind of spoke up and I said, well, your students are, yes, they're your customers, but they're also your product, right? Because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to be hiring them. And, if you're not listening to us and say, look, here's the things I need your students to be able to, I don't care if they know how to use TikTok, because that's not going to be a key part of my product development plan, right? What I do care about is that they know how to collaborate. They know how to use the core tools of business, of how businesses are run. Those are important things to consider in that process.
Yeah. So if you're available, I'm going to book you in for our next dean's meeting, because you're exactly like, you hit the nail on the head. And as I say, the paradigm of education continues to change in different places at different times, but very much so, especially with that lens of community college, is workforce development. That's what we're here to do. And students are the product we put out there. And that idea, like, tell me, as an employer, how important was it that a new employee be able to read a book and prepare a 6-page essay talking about that book and turn that into you? Like, is that something that you have people do anymore, right? Write a 6-page memo on something? Or is it more important that a group can come together with a problem, collaborate, seek to understand before being understood, talk amongst themselves, bring ideas together, synthesize ideas, and then come up with a solution to that problem, right? Like that, the same, you're totally right about that. And it continues to be an internal struggle in that world of generative AI, right? The writing an essay is, for better or worse, it's becoming a pretty antiquated way of demonstrating learning outcomes. Project-based things are not, right? Being able to do a coherent presentation on something live in front of a group of people, that is something that employers are looking for more. And so yeah, I appreciate that perspective. And yeah, if you're available, I'll book you into our next dean's meeting. We're having those same conversations department by department here.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to participate.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to most to see at InfoComm? What are you hoping to see at InfoComm this year?
That's a great question. So I'll give you kind of my answer, and then kind of maybe my school's answer a little bit, right? So I personally get to be in this sort of lucky place where I have a team coming from the school to really manage the things that Yavapai College needs. And I get to go to really connect with people in the industry. So my personal answer, what am I looking for, is new people that aren't connected to the community. And that's not just higher ed people, right? That is people in the industry. That'll be people from ScreenBeam who I haven't met before, right? Is building the group of people that are involved in what we do for the right reason. That's what's exciting to me, if that makes sense. At Yavapai College, we are literally in the process now of we've just came through a big capital project, right? Basically the end of a 10-year master plan. And what that means is it's time to start the next round. And I love that we never sit still. And so truly this coming fiscal year is our kickoff of what is the community college classroom of the future. Literally starting from an empty whiteboard. what does it need to be, and work from the end backwards. So what we're looking for are what are the technologies, be they hardware, software, and especially the capabilities underlying current hardware and software that we know will continue to grow, that will allow us to rethink what that is. I selfishly would love Yavapai College to be, a place that has classrooms that really don't look like anybody else's because we've been creative, but also you don't reinvent the wheel when it's the right thing for
Right.
students. So we're always looking to blend those two things. But on that front, we know what the pillars of that future classroom look like, right? And it is, the technology does not tell you how to teach. The technology is there to allow you to teach however you best need to.
Right.
The technology puts the students first, right? It isn't, we're
Right.
not here to just deliver information in one way. The more students can be in control of what's happening in a space, the more we support the pedagogy that turns out better use. And the third is the things that balance the experience between our collection of online asynchronous, online synchronous, hybrid synchronous, and all in-person students. And those things that, because there are varying levels of student success across those modalities. And so it is always how do we create as close to even experience across all of those as possible. So on a trade show floor, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? That means, what are the things that are enabling human interaction that we haven't had before? What are the things that is taking the profile, the amount of how much a user has to think and plan their technology use versus what they can just do on the fly? And seeking those things out, putting them on our whiteboard, and seeing it where it takes us.
So, that kind of takes me to this next question, right? Which is, how is the classroom workflow? How is the experience changing for educators in the classroom? And how does wireless collaboration, wireless display fit into that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the and I'll speak from my perspective at a community college. And again, I'm biased because I think a group of 30 learns a lot better than a group of 350 in a lecture hall, though that, there are different places and modalities that go into that. But I almost think that the term classroom is the wrong thing. There's basically, in our world, we have been basically shrinking, tearing down standard classrooms now pretty consistently for 10 years, as the classes that would normally be done in a regular classroom move more predominantly online or to other modalities. What's replacing them are learning spaces that are hands-on. They're labs, right? Not just science labs, but even, labs to do all kinds of different hands-on activities. And so wireless display, wireless collaboration is a key thing because, we have diesel engine labs, right? But there is no expectation that you don't have the ability to show content, to do demos in those places, right? Every lab we have is going to be technology enabled. So it works the same as other types of active learning spaces, where students are going through something step by step. Well, now they can bring up their notes, they can bring up their information, they can follow along with the video. An instructor can say, okay, everybody hold on, pause. I see some people are struggling with X. Let me show you. And then boom, they're wireless. And now they're right there with everybody. And that the day and age of learning being in desks, in rows, everybody facing one direction, is falling. And it is all about what's experiential. And that means that content needs to be in a weird place. It needs to be available immediately, right? And it needs to be easy for people to get there. So I know that it's kind of a little TED talk I have about that, but wireless display is a key part of it, because the other thing, right? Everywhere we're building now is, not only should the technology not tell you how to teach, the furniture shouldn't do it either. Furniture should be movable. It should be wherever you need it to be. If you want to clear everything out and have an empty floor, great. Well, now cables going to specific places become an impediment to that. And so we need to be really flexible on what things can be done without wires, and done reliably without wires.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing as well. Is there is a move away from this lecture only model, to a more collaborative peer engagement sort of model, right? And so the technologies that we've been working on to facilitate that obviously is our active learning, our browser cast, this moderation capability that I'm about. These things are all kind of coming together to help enable that shift, in a seamless yet affordable way. I mean, that's kind of the big thing about our active learning, right? Is that it's flexible, it's affordable, and it's scalable, right? And so, I think that's going to help grow that active learning sort of thing. I think we've seen it go from one or two classrooms on a campus to 8 or 10 now. And so I think it's slowly kind of building that momentum up. And I think our approach to active learning brings it in such a cost-effective way that it's going to hopefully help accelerate that growth.
Yeah, so I'll bring this back to what I said at the very beginning, and I'm not joking, which is there's only a handful of companies that I can say you can see the evidence of truly listening to customers, right, and adapting and moving with where things are going. And this is exactly what you're talking about, is that, which is the move away from lecture is not just because people are bored with it. It's because the data shows that's where student outcomes come from, right? The lecture style of learning was developed in Germany in the 1800s. That is not that, and college after college, you can see it in the student outcome data. We pay a ton of attention to that here, right? But that idea that okay, we need to move in this direction that is collaborative, active learning. It's project-based learning. It is not information delivery. We can get information any of 100 ways. It's how do we synthesize this? How do we do something with it that matters? That's the relevancy for higher education. And so to the old paradigm of doing that sort of thing followed an old paradigm of heavy duty audiovisual installation. And what you guys have developed is a way to accomplish the same thing and then surpass that to accomplish even more in a way that is cost effective, that leverages network technology that already exists and is built upon technology that's already in everyone's device that they already have. So it sort of checks those boxes. And then when you add on top of that, as I mentioned, the safety and security mechanisms that you have in it, and the ways that it makes for an easy yes on campuses, because I have a colleague who part of how they afforded to do a big deployment of ScreenBeam was because of the emergency alert capability of it. So they were able to borrow dollars from the emergency management, right, to help pay for that. And that's part of that. Doing more than one thing brings resources from traditionally separated places on campus together to create, the ability to do things you haven't done before. So again, I love companies that don't have I love all kinds of companies, but a company like, if you go to your guys' website, you are not going to see 87 to 870 product numbers, right? It is, here's a couple of products we're putting up there, and here's all the ways they're going to meet what's going on. And it just has that, it's use case first, it's capability first, and it's so well aligned with where education's going. So anyways.
The interesting thing, you bring up alerts, and here's another story I tell that speaks to that responsiveness, that nimbleness, but at the same time opened the door for us and opened our own eyes about, hey, what else can we do? Was I had a customer in Michigan that really loved ScreenBeam, wanted to deploy ScreenBeam. He's like, but I don't have the budgets for it. But he's like, hey, I've got this grant money here for security stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you give me this basic alerting tool, I could then use the grant money to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, well, let me go talk with my engineering. Literally 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks is all it took for us to build out the basic alerting functionality for him, and then he was able to use his grant money to pay for it. Now, we've obviously expanded so much more with the alerting technology since then, right? We've added more third-party integration partners and stuff like that. But then, that kind of opened the door towards, the whole more than wireless display that we are.
Yeah.
Because I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't mention okay, what's new for InfoComm this year, right?
Yeah.
Things that we didn't have last year. We didn't have our admin tools last year. So now we've got, advanced signage capabilities where, if you want to use your ScreenBeams, for things other than just wireless display, you can now do signage with that.
Yeah.
Those devices. And we got a whole content creation tool and everything like that available as part of the, creating playlists and all of that. We've got the messaging stuff now for facilities folks to be able to message out to individual rooms and say, hey, here's what's going on. We have the alerting stuff. So that whole package of admin tools is new this year. We've made some updates to active alerting, so that's going to be new this year. We've got the browser cast and some of the moderation stuff. That's all going to be new this year. I've got some new products, hardware products that we're working on that we may be, dropping some hints and stuff at InfoComm.
All right.
They're coming. So we've got so much stuff that is in the hopper right now that we're going to be excited to be talking about at InfoComm.
Yeah, it's so exciting because like I said, it's our Super Bowl. It's where you get a glimpse of the future, but also, again, the exciting part is, like we said, the worst a ScreenBeam's ever going to be is the first day you turn it on, because the continued development of your guys' platforms and ecosystems is just going to continue to grow the value. And talk about doing more with the same, it just meets that. It meets that for us to say, we're not buying something and waiting for it to get old and replace it. We're buying into a platform ecosystem that is looking to continue to solve problems for us into the future. And being able to bring funding from emergency, from marketing for signage things and other than that to boost that student experience by saying, look, if we're going to have these things that are here and can drive displays, there's a lot of things we can do out of the box with that. And so I'm again very personally excited that you guys are right across from HETMA, because it means it's going to be easy for people to see and learn all these things. And amongst all the stuff I've been organizing, show floor tours is a big one. Everyone that I'm organizing has ScreenBeam on it because they need to see these things. Everyone whose attention we can get needs to understand what this can do. Oh yeah, but here's the thing. Hey, keep making great stuff for higher education. We appreciate it, right? Like, it's, the industry is an interdependent group, right? Yeah, manufacturers need end users and technology managers to buy their products. Well, we need manufacturers to make great stuff for us, or else we can't bring it to bear for students. It's a two-way street. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I know we're going to be, I want to be sensitive to time and all of that kind of stuff. I appreciate you taking time to spend with us today. I will say the only drawback about InfoComm this year is that I won't have my gelato guy from ISE at the floor, so we won't have the really good gelato like we do over in Barcelona. But we'll make our best and make it an enjoyable time.
I agree, and that's what I'm saying. I think our corner of the world there in the convention center is going to be a good corner. There'll be no lack of refreshment for folks, but I'm going to tell you, I could do my regular rant on getting ISE onto the schedule for people from the US. It's just a difficult thing just with international travel attached to it for colleges and universities.
Yep.
But it's a great show, and you guys do such a great job over there. So yeah. Probably too much to have to fly the gelato guy and keep everything
Yeah.
frozen all the way from Spain over here. But looking forward to being. I was going to say neighbors, but I just have this feeling it's going to be more like one big booth rather than being neighboring booths. So
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to it as well. Again, thank you for your time, Ryan, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks in Las Vegas.
sounds good. Thank you for your time. I could talk to you all day, and very much looking forward to seeing you in Vegas.